According to a 2023 survey of web developers conducted by Indeed, front-end web developers can make up to $180,000 per year. Although using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript can often be frustrating, keeping this statistic in mind will give you the motivation to work through the pain. My name is Anthony Maida, and I've been creating websites for over 3 years. By the end of this presentation, you will know how to center an element on a web page. And as we get started, I'll show you how to set up your development environment, how to create the layout of your web page using HTML, adding style rules using CSS, and ultimately centering the element. Let's get started, and I encourage you to follow along. First, you want to ensure that you have an adequate setup to write your code. A computer with a keyboard is a must, and a mouse is highly recommended. You can use any code editor that you like, but I'll be using Visual Studio Code for this example. According to the 2023 developer survey conducted by popular software development website Stack Overflow, Visual Studio Code is the #1 most used code editor, with over 73% of the 90,000 participants selecting it as their preference. Now, we are going to set up our development workspace. On our desktop, we're going to right-click, go to New, Text Document, and rename this to index.html. Hit yes. Now we're going to right-click on this HTML file, go to Open with Visual Studio Code, and we are also going to right-click and open in our browser. And you're going to want to split your screen between the code editor and the browser. It's going to make development a whole lot easier. Next, we are going to create our page layout. We are going to create an HTML tag in triangle brackets. Then we are going to place a body element within the HTML tag. This is going to hold all of the elements on our web page. Now we are going to create a div element, which is also like a container that can hold other elements. And you can put anything in here, but I'm just going to put some text. And an important thing to keep in mind, which happens very often even to experienced developers, is that your changes will not appear in your browser until you save your code and then refresh the browser. And now you can see the formatting that we wrote in our code editor appears on our browser. But this is ugly because there's no styling. Next, we're going to add the styling by going back to our editor, creating a style tag, which is going to allow us to write some CSS style rules, creating a class called centered, and then in curly braces, put some properties like position, absolute. This is going to set the div to wrap around our text. We can set the background color to, I like light coral. You can make it anything you want. We are going to give it a border, which is both solid and 5 pixels wide. This is just for clarity. And we're also going to add some padding between the border and our text, which is 10 pixels. Another key point to keep in mind is that your style rules will not appear on your browser until you set the class of your div element to be the class we defined here. So we're going to write class equals quotations centered. Now if we save and refresh our browser, our styling appears and it's lovely. Finally, we're going to center our div by going back to our CSS class, setting the top property to 50%, the left property to 50%. This is going to position the element 50% of the way down the page and 50% across. Lastly, because elements by default are centered at their top left, since we want our element to be centered in the middle, we need to add one more property called transform, which is equal to translate, parentheses. Make sure you type the correct punctuation, otherwise your code will break, minus 50%, minus 50%. Now if we save and refresh our browser, we can admire our centered element. To summarize, Today, I showed you how to center an element on a web page. We went over how to set up a development environment, create a web page layout with HTML, add CSS style rules, and create the necessary rules to center an element. Remember, creating the perfect website takes care, patience, and dedication. While the tools we use can often seem obtuse and frustrating, they're still powerful tools that can make an impact on our daily lives. So let's make our world a little more connected, one web page at a time.